listening to, I say you are listening to, you are absolutely listening to the George Espinlov Show, coming to you live from the Funny Farm. Now, with no further ado, here comes Georgie!
Thank you. Excuse me. That's just wonderful. Thank you. Thank you very, very much to all of our friends down the street, around the corner, across this great nation, and around the world. Welcome to the George Espinlov Show that comes to you Monday through Friday, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, right here, live from the Funny Farm in a place called Our World. And you got it. We don't know where that is. We have no idea where that is. We just live here, and that's good enough for us. We want you to email us. Keep sending those emails to us. We get happy when we get emails, and they've been coming, and we've been happy. Email me at GeorgeCE. That's GeorgeCE at Comcast.net. GeorgeCE at Comcast.net. Keep them coming, and we'll keep firing them back at you. Just as quick as you send them, we'll send them back at you. So thank you for all of your words of support, your kindness, hanging in there with us, hanging out with us, and supporting us. And you have been just fantabulous. That's an Espinlov word. I made up that word all by myself. I think there's probably others that's going to take credit for it, but it's fantabulous. That is better than fabulous. So anyways, let me quit lip dripping here and get on with the order of the day and the business at hand. We had Steve Perry with us last night, who had written a book called Bright Light. Oh, get that book. Get that book. You will not be disappointed. And I'm not trying to push a book just to push a book. I mean, get that book because it is well worth it. He wrote the book about top secret missions in Vietnam. And he was a medical specialist in special forces. And he details many of the missions that he was on in North Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, so on and so forth. So do yourself a favor and get that book, Bright Light, just one light, Bright Light by Steve Perry. And I thank you, Steve, for coming last night. You did a wonderful, wonderful, fantabulous job. Thank you, my brother. Tonight is no exception. Tonight is another one of those get up, sit on the edge of your seat, because that's where you're going to end up at. Something that each and every one of us as Americans need to hear. You often hear me say we need to open our eyes and we need to open our ears and we need to begin to think as individuals. We need to look at things. We need to hear things. Don't be hoodwinked. Don't be hoodwinked by whatever comes your way. Open your eyes, open your ears, and do some thinking on your own. Homeland Insecurity is a book written by our guest. And our guest is Brett. Let me see. He told me how to say this. Braaten. Okay. Brett Braaten. And now that I got that right, Brett, welcome to the George Espinlov Show.
George, it's my pleasure. Thank you.
I had to stumble over your last name until it came to me how you told me to pronounce it, but I think I got it.
That's terrific.
It took me a while, and I'm notorious. Excuse me, I'm notorious for tearing up last names, including my own. So, if I do pronounce it wrong, please don't feel bad, because I've had mine for 64 years, and I still have problems with it, so we'll work it out.
Not to worry.
I really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule and coming to be with us and challenging us and making us think. Tell us a little bit about your background, where you come from, and so on and so forth.
Well, I hail from International Falls, Minnesota. I think folks can be familiar with that at different times during the year, usually in the winter. But on national weather maps, it will have that highlighted as the ice box in the cold spot of the nation. So I grew up there, born and raised there, and moved away after having spent, I guess, almost 22 years there, going to college out of town, and then going back to work as an inspector at the port of entry in International Falls with Canada, right by Fort Frances, Ontario. So I grew up on a border town. I've had experience with customs, doing part-time work during a couple of summers before graduating from college and finally getting a full-time job, and moved into North Dakota down to St. Louis as an inspector, then came on as an agent with Customs Service. There is a difference. The inspectors, I've always said, are the folks at the borders that you see that inspect your luggage and they inspect cargo coming in, commercial goods. Agents are like FBI agents in the sense that's the kind of work we did. We did investigations of all sorts. And since the primary mission of Customs is to collect, protect the revenue, and interdict the dangerous flow of narcotics, in addition to a number of other missions, that's essentially what we did.
How long did you do that?
Well, I was an agent, inspector first for about 4 years, and became an agent and spent 25 years, so a total of 29 years. Retired 3 years ago, September in 2009. And felt it was time to part company. I felt the agency, Department of Homeland Security, was going in a particular direction, and we can talk more about the merger later on. But things were just not going well, and I had the opportunity to get out at that time, and I took advantage.
It's the old get out while the getting's good.
Pretty much it, yes.
Yeah. Your book, Homeland Insecurity, Failed Politics, Policies, and a Nation at Risk. You know, we have more information coming at us today than we have ever had before. We're just being bombarded with information. Unfortunately, many of us aren't paying attention to it. And many of us are not taking the time to decipher it and figure out what's real and what's not real. The government is massive. Do you know how many employees the government actually has?
You know, I've heard the numbers. I know it changes. I know Customs is trying to, as Homeland Security is trying to whittle down some of their staffing. I don't know what the current staffing level is. It's way up there.
I like what you wrote where it said, every day busy Americans scurry about attending to the needs of daily life with pressures of family and work. Most don't have the time it takes to think about, let alone fully understand the vast government bureaucracy that they trust to take care of everything else that affects them. You know, when I read that a while ago, it dawned on me, we sure do put a lot of trust in those people that are supposed to be doing these jobs, don't we? We
do. I have the benefit in writing the book of having been an insider for all that time, and all of us, all of the agents, this is the information that's in the book is, you could boil that down to common knowledge. I mean, I'm not the only one that's aware of it. We spent time chatting with each other in areas that were secured where we were, first of all, checking over our backs to make sure no one was in a position to hurt us.
Mm-hmm.
And, quietly having our conversations in muted tones and then moving on. But all that time, people had said, one of us has got to write a book. We've got to let people know what's been going on and what this is all about. Because there's, you call it omerta, which is used by the mafia. And I'm not saying the government's the mafia in any way, shape, or form, but there is a code of silence. So the folks that are agents and inspectors, maybe not so much inspectors, but the agents certainly guard who they speak to, who they talk with, because there's usually a little bit of fear of retaliation. We only have to look as far as, and I'm sure we'll talk about this Fast and Furious with the ATF agents that came forward there and what's happened. Sepalou, I think, lost his job recently, the agent who came forward. And that is what we know as reality as agents, so we keep our mouths shut. So all that time goes on, and the system chugs on, and things muddle on, and the American public is none the wiser.
And we're just walking around like the birds are singing, the sun's shining, the sky is blue, and everything's coming up roses, huh?
Yeah, pretty much. When I had my book launch, I put it this way. I said, it's like the government comes up with a new program. You're going to have a core of people that says, why don't you explain this to us? We're not sure how this is going to work. Take, for instance, the drone program that's now being proposed for flying over the entire country, keeping an eye on everything. I guess trafficking illegal aliens trying to get in, that's what they're telling us. But then they hand you a pair of X-ray specs and say, okay, this will help you see clearly as to what this is. And of course, X-ray specs, as we remember growing up years and years ago, was this mirage type thing where, you could see under people's clothing. So guys were, wanting to get it out of the back of a comic book. Mm-hmm. And they're telling us, look through that, you'll see it clearly, and you'll see it's plain as the nose on your face what we're doing. And that's what they expect, that we're going to buy pretty much everything that's dished out.
And thanks to the media, they kind of play right along with it, right?
They do. A lot of the news of the day is filtered. Mm-hmm. So you have public affairs officers at multiple levels that are the ones that do the press releases. These are polished people that know how to deal with the media. So whatever message is coming out of there is wordsmithed so that no one's exposed. And the truth is, the devil's in the details. So these different things that go on in the media, we can also talk about that at some point. What you read in the reports, a lot of it is just generated by the agency to make the agency look much better than it actually is.
That's kind of scary. When you talked about the drones, do we use them much on the border, or is it a new thing that we're going to be using them on the border? And what is this thing with drones flying in different parts of the country?
Well, what's been happening, I can't speak to other parts of the country. Some of the reports I've seen, I have not dealt directly with it. I know that they're in use by the Border Patrol, Customs and Border Protection, which is part of Homeland Security, and that is the umbrella for Border Patrol that uses them in the southwest border. Understand the strategy of government. If they actually don't want to take care of a situation that is boots on the ground, military, the Army National Guard, they don't want to put the guard on the border. They don't want it to give it the appearance of militarizing our border with Mexico. We have nothing really much to worry about with Canada, although there was one terrorist trying to come through Blaine, Washington years ago that tried to get to LAX and create havoc there, but he was stopped, caught by inspectors at the port of entry. But the Border Patrol does use it. And so what the government does, they substitute technology. They substitute virtual fences for an actual physical fence. They substitute drones for Border Patrol agents. In the southwest border, just to give you an idea of what's going on there, just that piece of it, where they're now using drones, I guess, they're shutting down or proposed to shut down 9 Border Patrol stations in 4 states. Those areas that are highly used for trafficking, both drug and human trafficking. The proposal is shut those down, which doesn't make a lot of sense. So you put a drone in the air and you clean out 4 states of 9 stations. And that's how the government works. They substitute technology for what actually works, which are boots on the ground.
So, drone flying in air, watching the border, 9 stations gone. Now, when this drone sees what it sees and somebody on the other end sees what the drone sees, what happens to the illegals or the activity that's going on coming across the border? Who's there to stop them?
One of the numbers that might surprise you and your audience is we have 1,951 miles, give or take a few miles, of actual border with Mexico. We've heard 43% is under control, marginal control, or managed control. Actually, what is actually controlled to a level where you might be satisfied with being able to respond to it, up at 1,951 miles, 18%. 18% is actually controlled by the Border Patrol in the sense they can respond to an event. So we have 82%, the remaining 82%, where they may take a picture, they may take the video. Otherwise, the drug cartels can bring in anybody they want or anything they want. The human smugglers can do the same in 82% of the cases that go on down there.
So to use an old-time cliche, it's basically a walk in the park. I mean, there's not much resistance to get through.
The only resistance now, there have been, I don't know if there's been 600 miles of fence completed. They've stopped that. I've been told by people down there, currently, they're hiring militia to help them guard their land where they're herding livestock.
Mm-hmm.
Cattle routinely get killed and processed by the illegals coming in. They have mountains of waste that they have to deal with that's been left behind, water bottles and all this other waste and clothes that the ranchers then have to clean up on their own dime. What led to Jan Brewer, the governor of Arizona, writing her book was the murder of an Arizona rancher who was responding. He was out on unusual patrol with his dog Blue on a four-wheeler with a shotgun on the four-wheeler, and he would often render assistance to aliens that looked like they were in trouble, giving them water and helping them. This one particular time, he had spotted a load coming through of drugs and managed to get law enforcement on site. They stopped it. So you might expect they weren't happy. That is the drug cartel. So sometime later, he radioed his brother and said, "I'm going out on patrol, and this is the area I'm going to be in. I've got Blue with me." So he's on this patrol. He spots an alien that appears to be in trouble, and he goes over to help him. It was a setup. Ted Kendricks was shot. He managed to drive 100 yards before he collapsed and died. The smuggler, or actually the one who took up the price on Ted Kendrick, shot his dog. And so when they found the rescuers found Ted, they saw that his dog lay dying too, but was trying to protect him. This is the reality of the southwest border, not to mention all the land now that we as Americans are not using because it's been posted as too dangerous for us to use. One of them, a national monument down there. So we've got all this land that's been posted, do not enter or at your own risk. And we're told, or we believe, that this is the new normal, I guess. And we move on with our lives. The book is intended to say, don't accept this new normal so easily. Think about what's going on.
When we hear the politicians up there with their words, and I've always had problems with politicians. There has been a few that's been okay, but for the most part, they can say 1,000 words but never say anything. And when they bring this thing up about protecting our border and so on and so forth, you never hear a man stand up there and say just what you said. I mean, it's everything else, but it's not just what you said, which is the absolute truth. And so we are kind of, what's it called, being lulled to sleep, that false pretense that everything is all right when it really isn't. Is that correct?
it's correct. We are buying it hook, line, and sinker, and I have no dog in the fight. I only came out of this, armed with the knowledge that I'm retired. I think I'm out of harm's way. I don't know what they can do to a retirement check, if they could stop it. But in the sense of being sent off somewhere on, a 6-month temporary duty to a place I don't want to be as a retaliatory act against me opening my mouth, hopefully that's come and gone. So as I said, except to let people know that this is the situation. You've got to be informed of the level of protection that the government is willing to provide you, and understand at the same time that politics is going to limit or misdirect what we would assume to be a level of protection that we may have been used to at one point, but now it's changed. And we can get into additional further discussion of the differences between the two agencies now that live together, in a sense, under Homeland Security, which is Immigration Customs Enforcement, and Homeland Security Investigations. And we can talk more about that later as you wish. But that's the situation with the book, is to just say, listen, here's the facts. Here are the facts by someone who doesn't have a political agenda, except to tell people the truth in a way that they can understand, and they can take it or leave it.
Could you tell me why we don't use our military to protect our borders? Is there any logical sense of why we don't use the military to protect our borders like most other countries do? Why don't we?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, is this fear of being perceived as militarizing the border, and now we've had as many, I think, as 1,200 National Guardsmen down there. And I think, from what I recall, when I was working, they were only allowed to assist in information or intelligence analysis, so they weren't sitting there like the Minutemen were arm in arm in the border area. Now, I could be mistaken, but that was my understanding of how that worked. The 1,200 has now been reduced to 300. So when you have 1,950 miles and 300 warm-blooded American soldiers, that who knows what they're doing? They could be sitting at a desk. It makes no sense. Once we get a moment, if you want to go into it, I do have a report that was filed just in November of 2012 by the U.S. House Committee on Homeland Security. It's called A Line in the Sand, Countering Crime, Violence, and Terror at the Southwest Border, and I would just cite a few of the major findings, some of which I know I hadn't heard of. So it illumined my mind, especially considering that November 2012 was just a few months ago.
Mm-hmm. Let's do it. You got it handy?
I have it right here in front of me.
All right, let's do it.
And just a couple of the points, it talks about, although U.S. security tightened its security airports and land borders, the U.S.-Mexico border remains the obvious weak link. In 2012, as I mentioned, National Guard presence on the southwest border was reduced to 300 soldiers. The Texas Department of Public Safety reports that there have been 58 incidents of shots fired at Texas lawmen by Mexican cartel operatives since 2009. Experts believe the southwest border has become a great threat of terrorist infiltration into the United States. Now, this is the government committee reporting this. It's not me. It's not my research.
Mm-hmm.
They go on to say Iran and Hezbollah have a growing presence in Latin America. Hezbollah has a significant presence in the United States that could be utilized in terror attacks intended to deter U.S. efforts to curtail Iran's nuclear program. Mm-hmm. Latin America, by virtue of drugs, has become a money laundering and major fundraising center for Hezbollah. Hezbollah's relationship with Mexican drug cartels, which control secured smuggling routes in the U.S., is documented as early as 2005. And finally, if Iran's assassination plot against the Saudi Arabian ambassador in Washington, D.C. had been successful, Iran's forces intended to use Los Zetas drug cartel for other attacks in the future. These are the major findings. It's a lengthy report. It's available online. If you query A Line in the Sand, Countering Crime, just use those search terms, you'll find it. your audience can pull it up for themselves and have at it. And of course, it goes into a great amount of detail, which would fill in the blanks of the major findings as to how they arrived at those conclusions. But that's what the report addressed.
And that's a report from our own government, within our own government. But yet,
yes, from the House of Representatives.
But yet we don't hear anything. Now, when people was making a lot of noise about the trouble down on the border, that's when all of a sudden I guess they decided to send the 1,200 fellows down there. And I remember what you said, that they wasn't going to be used as to patrol the border per se. They were going to do. They could be kind of like behind the scenes, but after the noise calmed down, then they move 900 of them out and leave 300. So it's almost like a charade game. Okay, here it is, and then when nobody's looking, or when everybody forgets to look or forgets the whole situation, they just move things back where they was. That's kind of right, isn't it?
The government knows how we as Americans react. Let's look at just gas prices.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you go back into some old videos or old film, you see the prices on a gas station. You see the prices at $1.09, and now we're paying upwards of $3.50, $3.60 a gallon. And when it goes down a dime to $3.50 or $3.40, we celebrate. Say, "Wow, we gained 10 cents a gallon."
Mm-hmm.
And it's this new normal syndrome I'm talking about. So the government knows that they can give it a short amount of attention, and that we as Americans, no matter what, even after 9/11, the churches and synagogues were filled to the capacity. And days later, weeks later, back to empty. This is how we operate. So the government knows what we're going to do. We're going to react very strongly. We're going to cool off. We're going to move on, and they're going to go back to doing what they want to do.
You would excuse me. You would think when you see these huge tunnels that's been dug coming across the border, and the sophisticated ways that they're bringing drugs in, and the fact that the terrorists can walk, it's like walking down the sidewalk. Does anyone know or have any idea of how many terrorist cells that may be operating in this country? Does anybody know that?
I don't know if anyone knows that, but I can tell you that in order to, if I was in charge, I would say we got to keep a lid on this. We can't have people panicking.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got to keep it quiet, and it could be classified information, easily classified, and held by the Bureau, held by the CIA. I have no idea. This is all speculation. That would be my strategy if I was a person in charge. I would say we're going to keep this under wraps. Is that being done? I don't know. That's how classified information works.
Wow, that is like I said before. That's scary. You said about the government's own findings again. Which agencies contributed to the failure to stop the attacks of 9/11? Now, all these agents. Go ahead.
Well, all of the agencies that are charged with border protection and intelligence contributed. You had the Bureau, FBI, doing search warrants, holding on to information. You had Jamie Gerlich, who was with Clinton, that said we have this wall now that exists between enforcement and intelligence, so there can't be sharing. But it was misinterpreted, where they actually could have been sharing the information. Not a lawyer, so I would have to really get into it, but I can tell you that it was misread, misapplied.
Mm-hmm.
So there could have been information sharing between the Bureau and the CIA. So the information sharing dried up. The Bureau was not giving information to the agency because it thought it wasn't supposed to. The CIA published what we call the Red Book. The Red Book was information, terrorist threats, It was a book that sat on the shelf at a port of entry, that ports of entry where I worked, that I don't think anyone ever opened. The information became old in '92 when the CIA quit writing it, based on the failure of this information sharing. So they had nothing to talk about, no new information. So as a source, it became unreliable and outdated. Now what happens, you have inspectors that rely on the information in order just to do a good job. But if the information is years old, it's hardly worth the paper it's written on.
Mm-hmm.
Let's fast forward. We had the attacks on the World Trade Center in '93. There was no reaction at the ports of entry where I worked. I mean, it was a news item. It was, wow, I was in New York City, so I guess we can expect stuff like that to happen there. But in terms of really ramping up security, I don't recall any real move to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Immigration, the INS, wasn't getting Red Book information, so they didn't know. But they had another issue to contend with. Whether it was based on a congressional complaint or just policy, there was deferential treatment granted to those persons traveling with Saudi passports. You can attribute it to whatever you wish. You can say big oil, or you can just say these people will have access to a lot of money, and if they get into positions of power and influence, we need to rely on them. In looking just at 9/11 in a thumbnail, 15 of the 19 hijackers were Saudi nationals. The 19 hijackers applied for 23 visas and got 22. They used 364 aliases. They entered the United States 34 times over 21 months.
Mm.
The last time that you can get on and do the 9/11 Commission report, pull it up, print it up,
Mm-hmm.
make sure you have a lot of ink. It's going to take a fair amount of sheets of paper, but you can read it for yourself. Here's what it boils down to. Not only was there deferential treatment granted to folks traveling with Saudi passports, an unwritten rule, and there's plenty of those out there. The inspectors at ports of entry were also told you cannot, these are INS inspectors, Immigration and Naturalization Service inspectors that determine the admissibility of an alien applying for admission to the United States. If they don't have everything in order, the inspector can take them off the primary line where they just come up and show their passport and make sure their visa is current, or they have supporting documents, and they can be referred to a more thorough inspection, at which time it can be decided that for whatever reason you can't come into the United States. We're going to put you back on a plane and you fly home. Now, in the situation with the airports, there's such a tremendous crush of people waiting to clear the inspectors, the INS inspectors, who are the first inspectors to see arriving passengers, the first ones to determine admissibility, are given 45 seconds.
45 seconds?
45 seconds to review everything that they have before they make a decision to send them on for more inspection.
Wow.
If they go beyond 45 seconds, or if they refer too many people, they are threatened with being sent to retread school, which is retraining at the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center in Brunswick, Georgia. It's a nice place, but it's away from home, and it's I think about 7 weeks when I went through. They don't want to go through that again,
Uh-huh.
so they move quickly.
Wow.
In the case of Atta, here's one that's going to really, I think, curdle your blood. Mohammed Atta was the controller for the group.
Mm-hmm.
He was the controller. He was the go-to guy. He was one of the pilots that flew into which tower, I don't know. Probably the first tower that was hit, whether south or north, I don't recall. He came in from Madrid, Spain, presumably had been at a meeting doing some final analysis or workup for the group's attacks that were going to occur in the coming weeks. He arrived in Miami, claimed to be a student, did not have any student supporting documents with him. One of the supervisors had said, even if he had had supporting documents, could have been phony. Our system we have for charting or tracking student movements is full of garbage. We don't rely on it anyway. So he lacked the documents he needed to come into the country, but he had a Saudi passport. And the inspector said, I took a minute to look at him. And I don't want to refer him because if he gets referred, well, he may have gotten referred. That's unclear at this point. I think he was referred, but they let him go. They let him go. They misstamped his passport to give him more time than he actually was permitted under his visa type. He didn't have the supporting documents. He came in. It was his last entry. And the rest you know.
So, Brett, when you say they come in, excuse me, 34 different times, when each time they come into the country, like the last time he came in, he said he was a student. Each time they come in, they have to say what they're here for, like they're a student or they're going to do some work or whatever. Is that right?
Yes, and they have supporting documents that can be queried to make sure that what they're saying is accurate.
That's amazing. 34 times before everything went to hell in a handbasket, and nobody's even burped or blinked. That's scary. That's scary. It's making me stutter now.
Well, here's the scary part. The findings of the 9/11 Commission report said, obviously, the way to delay, if not stop the attacks, would be to keep the people out. That would have been the mission, the goal. That might have at least delayed, might have been inevitable at some point.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't want to assign blame. They didn't want to blame the Immigration Naturalization Service. For what reason? The INS was cast as a failure. It was on the chopping block, which was to be eliminated. It was an agency that was not working. It was, for a number of reasons, chief among them, this was an agency prone to political influence and pressure unlike no other. The Customs Service, in our case, was, a kilo of cocaine is always going to be bad. We don't care if the kilo of cocaine has hurt feelings.
Mm-hmm.
So not only is it subject to the administrative whims, the political whims of the day, but also political correctness to the nth degree as it relates to the treatment of fellow human beings. The satin glove approach to law enforcement, which does not work. And that's why the brand was so watered down with the INS that none of the rest of us and all the other agencies had any faith whatsoever in whatever they offered to do for us in terms of task force cases or support at airports. No one trusted them because of all of the above.
Wow. It it must have been frustrating for good men and women, regardless of what agency they were in. It had to be frustrating beyond words to be out there laying it on the line, busting your hump, but yet it's almost like you have one hand tied behind your back, right?
In the sense of Immigration Naturalization Service, yes, absolutely. But as I said, the Customs Service, because we were authentic law enforcement, not dealing with any sort of political pressures that we now want to legalize cocaine as well as marijuana in at least a couple states. We want to go nationwide now with legalization. That wasn't going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So we didn't have that to worry about. It was not the albatross around our necks like it was around the INS neck. So it wasn't all their fault. They were governed by dealing with people, dealing with pressures from Congress and the White House, and dealing with the ever-present political correctness that no one has a good explanation for.
What about the politics and the power? I mean, behind the scenes, excuse me, those politics and that influence and power. What does that do to our national security or to our agencies to protect us? I'm sure that hinders, right?
Well, there's another story there. I think we have time.
Sure we do.
The Immigration Naturalization Service, as I said, we all knew, Customs certainly knew, that their days were numbered. And by all accounts, they were done. Now we have the attack of 9/11. And as is the way of government, reorganize, make things bigger, because bigger is better. And that comes from people who don't understand authentic workings of government to get that straight. So Joseph Lieberman, up around your neck of the woods, decided we're going to make a bigger agency by combining U.S. Customs and Immigration Naturalization Service, the one that was supposed to go away. Not only did we get thrown in with Immigration Naturalization Service, but through branding, they get the top billing. Like Martin and Lewis. You know, it was a crazy thing with INS now being Immigration Customs Enforcement. And a story that I have no grounds to support was there was a push to give it a different name, like Criminal Investigations and Enforcement, CIE. But apparently, and this is the word on the street, at least with customs people, the Bureau objected to the naming, saying it was confusingly similar. So therefore, we settled with ICE, Immigration Customs Enforcement. Now we have what should have been a defunct agency in charge. Everything Customs stood for went on a back burner. So on the one hand, Customs is saying the INS took over, hostile takeover. Now all we work is immigration. On the other hand, you have the immigration people saying the same about us. But the truth to be told is that the agency became largely immigration. And given their penchant for, you know, not doing it well, now we weren't doing it well either. And plus, those that had been forcibly blended in with that had really no interest or background in working with people or immigration. And these archaic systems, I can't begin to tell you the difficulty in processing people and determining admissibility and exceptions to exceptions. I mean, you have to be someone who's steeped in it to really understand it. So now we have a whole group of people from the Customs Service thrown in with this agency that's now supposed to somehow mold itself into the premier law enforcement agency for the be-all and end-all for immigration and customs matters. And neither job it did well because of the merger.
When you talked about the wall, and I remember the big fiasco that was going on. Why is it, or why was it, or why is it still? I mean, is it big egos that the FBI don't want to share the light with the CIA don't want to share the light with the Homeland Security? Is there so much competition amongst these agencies that the job actually gets pushed to the side?
There are egos involved, agency reputations that have been around for a long time. Making no bones about it, I mean, the FBI has cast itself, and with the media attention and stories and the successes, it's coined itself the premier law enforcement agency of the United States. The rest of the agencies were basically in the shadow of the Bureau. And I'm not saying the Bureau doesn't do its job well.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it makes mistakes, and a lot of times it will work with agencies that will fall over themselves to help the Bureau out, and then when it comes time to, I guess, get in front of cameras, all the other agencies are not there, are absent, and the Bureau is out front and doing what they do best, which is commanding the media, which, you know, we look at the successes. We can't deny they have successes, but still, there are things that are going on behind the scenes which the Bureau undoubtedly knows about. We just know about through relationships that things really don't work out as smoothly as is portrayed in the media. So as far as specific event, difficult. But as far as 9/11, that is a specific event. Now, what they do in their day-to-day life is another matter, which I can't speak to. I can only speak from the 9/11 stance and from general relationships between the Bureau and others. Now, the agency, CIA, is, you know, we call them the spooks.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they operate in the background, and you really don't hear much of it. There's some classified information that, you know, agents generally get a hold of. Generally have, if they have the right classification level, they'll get access to this information, which is not all that. Not a great supply of it. So they watch it very carefully. So what the agency does is anyone's guess. So as far as getting along, you have the big boy on the block, which is the Bureau. The rest of us were the also-rans, doing the best we could, but the Bureau commanded the status, they commanded the budget, and the reputation, and so we had to deal with it.
When I've watched some things on the History Channel, Discovery Channel, whatever, about our ports and the vulnerability that is at our ports. You know, I was watching one last, or not last night. I was watching one night, and the man said it's an impossibility to be able to check every bit of cargo that comes into our ports. Or do we got a handle on that puppy, or are we running behind the eight ball with it as far as checking things out in our ports?
There was a killing that happened a number of years ago in the 80s. Enrique Camarena was a DEA agent undercover in Mexico. He was murdered. And the belief was that he was going to be thrown in the trunk of a car and be hauled across the El Paso port of entry and dumped somewhere. So William von Raab, the commissioner of the time, under Ronald Reagan, said, we're going to close the ports. We're going to check every trunk. The uproar from American business at the delays for the traffic was intense, so that operation had to be suspended. The ports are I've been down there. I've worked El Paso and different places down there. The Ciudad Juarez is a crazy place. I mean, there's guns, there's hot lead flying, there's people being decapitated. Our Border Patrol agents are facing this level of violence with semi-automatic rifles by shooting back non-lethal beanbag rounds at people who are shooting at them with live rounds.
Mm-hmm.
That's what our people are dealing with. And so we wonder why Special Agent Brian Terry with the Border Patrol back in December of 2010 was killed with an AK-47 when he was shooting a beanbag round. And this is what our guys are dealing with. When I was with Von Raab in Washington, D.C. back in the late 80s and doing a border swing through McAllen, Brownsville, Laredo, all of them to a man said, we're being shot at all the time from the Mexican side. We have, I think they had 12-gauge shotguns possibly at that time. They wanted fully automatic weapons, which are very difficult to shoot with any degree of accuracy.
Mm-hmm.
So they said, we need more firepower because we're being outgunned. So now, fast forward 2010, we're shooting beanbag rounds because of, once again, political correctness. So our people are being deliberately put at harm's way. Just to give another example, Jaime Zapata was a young agent out of Texas. He volunteered for a tour in Mexico City. He and another agent were returning to Mexico from a meeting up closer to the border, and there was a roadblock set up by the Zeta drug cartel. They knew that this vehicle, an armor-plated, I believe it was an Expedition or something, or a Suburban, some larger SUV, and it had diplomatic plates on it. They knew it was en route. They figured it was an inside job involving someone at the embassy that had let them know, you have this vehicle coming your way at such and such a time. So the agent, not thinking anything of it, just pulled over and shifted into park. All the guns for the Zetas come out. Of course, when you shift into park with the vehicle, the doors unlock. They try to force their way in through the door and put their gun barrel through the door of the car. He managed to shut the door and said, we're diplomats, and then tried to lock the door, but it hit the down button for his driver's side window. So this assailant shot the barrel of the gun through the window and shot both, killing Jaime Zapata, and wounding the other agent. Now, the other agent managed to get the window up for whatever reason. How he did, I don't know. And the Zetas continued to pump rounds into the now locked armor-plated vehicle, and none of it penetrated. So the other agent survived, and Zapata was killed. This is what has become the new normal now, which people don't know about. So they go shopping at a grocery store and do their daily routine, and we have our people on the southwest border, which has really become, I think, what should be a military operation, just my opinion, though, and there's a loss of life.
Now, Mexico protects their borders with their military, don't they?
Well, yeah, and then they've had incursions into our side as well, the Federales and Army, regular Army. So we've had a number of incidents where that's been happening down there. I don't know that I have the exact numbers. I will continue to look through my notes and see if I can come up with that. But yes, that's almost becoming commonplace. And we're saying, once again, that's just the way things are. And are we supposed to say, well, I guess that's the way things are?
I'll be spitting sideways before this is all over with. My goodness. Now, if someone sneaks across the border into Mexico, not particularly the United States, but a country that's hooked on to Mexico, if someone slips across the border and they catch them, do they handle them with kid gloves and do the PC and all the stuff we do, or do they really drop a hammer on somebody?
I'm just looking for my notes about that one case where the American returning veteran took that, I think it was a 410 shotgun. He called and he stopped at the U.S. border and said, I've got this antique shotgun from my grandfather, and I'd like to go down there into Mexico, and I don't know if they plan on doing some hunting. I'm not finding my notes, but nonetheless, they said, yeah, you fill out your registration form, so go ahead and go into Mexico. This was before Christmas of last year. And he went down there. The Mexicans arrested him for possessing a firearm that wasn't even on their list of prohibited weapons. They threw him in jail, Mexican jail, for almost 5 months. The White House didn't say a thing. The embassy didn't say a thing. You had a bunch of congressmen and people back in the state of Florida that started asking questions, what's going on? People, I think the sheriffs along the border and other places threatened to say, we're not going to be tourists. We're going to make sure people know the way you treat Americans. And so this fellow is shown sitting on a cot with his legs handcuffed to the metal post of the cot, and he's got drug cartel members in there threatening to cut his head off. So finally, after 4 or 5 months, here's a kid who is suffering from PTSD, coming back from tours, trying to recover and relax. He's now in the Mexican jail for almost 5 months, and only because of some activity by the Congress and local law enforcement and concerned citizens did they actually spring him. And I think it was more in a response to the threat of withholding tourism that they finally released him. That was just right around Christmas. So the kid, this fellow, and I'm looking for his name, still not finding it, this fellow had to go to at least 2 hospitals after crossing back into the United States on his way back home because he was so dehydrated and obviously had been living under stress for that long, because he finally had to be put in solitary because they said they were going to kill him. And so we just let that happen. And yet when we have illegals here that are taken into custody, if they're going through a sex change, the directions to those U.S. people that are holding them, detention removal officers who are part of Immigration Customs Enforcement, who used to work with state and locals, I can get into that too, they're told we are not going to withhold their sex-altering drugs because that could be their hormone therapy to assist in the sex alteration, the sex change, because that could be injurious to their health. So our people are being forced to administer sex change drugs to those that are going through that process, the illegals that are going through that process. And we have our Americans being treated the way they are by the Mexicans, and we don't say a word about it. And now we're in a rush for amnesty, essentially what it is. So we want to continue to kowtow to that and say, treat our people as you will, and I'll let all those people that are here illegally, 20 million, I think, become eventually citizens. So, when you weigh all of this in the balance, you can't help but scratch your head.
Yeah. It's you'll scratch a bald spot in your head, and I don't have a whole lot of hair left, but oh my God, I've heard different numbers: 11 million, 13 million, 15 million, 20 million, so on and so forth, and I kind of lean to the bigger numbers. Uh, what what we have laws on the books, right? That if somebody don't come through the front door and go through the proper procedure, then there's penalties and repercussions, and hit the road, Jack. You're going back. But where, Brett, did we all of a sudden stop enforcing these laws, and what happened to us? What happened to us that we're in this predicament?
Well, there's a few things, and I'll start at the top. To get to your first question, what are we doing and what are we not doing? I worked in Minnesota. That's where my home port was, and as I said, I never got involved in immigration until the last 7 years of my career. I can tell you from my experience and being told by colleagues, immigration colleagues that come over, that the U.S. Attorney's Office in Minneapolis, D. Todd Jones, here at the very end, who's now the acting director for ATF, with all of this going on with ATF, with Fast and Furious, and now this episode in Milwaukee where there was a blown undercover gun operation that he basically is in charge of in Washington. He was turning down, as well as other U.S. attorneys before him, turning down immigration cases, these deportation cases where you have an illegal that would be deported and come back in, and they would not criminally prosecute these people unless they had been caught 4 times. So 3 of the 4 times they were just turning down potential prosecutions. They don't want to be bothered. They don't look on immigration violations as a priority. So there's something that the Immigration Service can't control. It's a political whimsy again. So not only they have that issue, now we have the issue where there was a decision reached in the Arizona lawsuit of the Supreme Court upholding one of the provisions saying that law enforcement could ask for papers to prove citizenship or prove status. I don't know if the Supremes have come out real hard on that, hard and fast. I think they're waiting to see what happens, what case law comes out of it. But nonetheless, it's been upheld. The Obama administration, or certainly the administration before George Bush, had the 287G project, which I was involved with, going out and cross-designating state and local law enforcement, saying, you are, cross-designated, you have our blessing, and you can ask immigration questions. So if you're out patrolling and you're not picking them up just for being illegals, but rather they've committed some other violation, whether it's a moving violation, DUI, or some petty crime, and you have them in custody for a lawful reason, you can ask them that question. If they don't have an adequate answer, you can call Immigration Customs Enforcement. And under the 287G program, which actually worked very well, that is, detention removal would go out to the jail where the alien was housed, and if there was no prosecution for that alien, then they would be deported. Generally, though, we waited till the alien was prosecuted and convicted, and then the state, of course, would say, well, we don't want to house this person for their sentence, so we want them deported. But now you have a criminally convicted alien, which makes it even harder for them to come in. So now they're an ag felon, so aggravated felon, and that adds to the weight, the leverage that immigration had to keep people out. So now you have the immigration decision with the Supreme Court, 287G. Obama administration is not happy. The Department of Justice is not happy. That doesn't fit their agenda. So now they go out to all the DRO, detention removal officers, and tell them, ICE, Immigration Customs, through John Morton, who's the director, and Janet Napolitano, who's the secretary, you will not enforce 287G. You will not help state and local law enforcement get these people out of the country. Because we're not happy with the Supreme Court decision. We're not going to do an executive order, so we'll do a policy change. And we're going to tell you you're not going to enforce that. So now you have the state and locals that are high and dry. That's why you have somebody out there trying to figure out what do we do as a state to enhance our immigration laws. That's why you have a number of states being sued, and I think some have waited so long for the Arizona immigration case to wind its way through the courts, which it has. I'm not exactly sure if there's been a change in status with the others, but I know that they've all been waiting for the Supreme Court decision on this. But our agents, for their part, having been told you don't help state and local anymore under the 287G program, are sitting on their hands. I've had my colleagues tell me, we're going crazy, sitting on our hands. You now have a group of 10 agents that are suing Department of Homeland Security personnel, Homeland Security Secretary Janet Napolitano, and John Morton, the director. 10 agents have entered into a lawsuit out of Texas, suing them, saying, we're not being allowed to do our job. You're asking us to do something we believe is unconstitutional. So what's going to happen, you have to ask, to those 10, regardless of what happens to the case. But they took a stand. They were the only 10 brave enough to take a stand out of the whole country because they'd had enough. Now this affects the whole country. It affects all of us.
Now the feds are the only ones that can deport someone. Is that correct? Like,
that's correct.
You know, so the states are, like you said, left high and dry. I mean, they're between a rock and a hard place all over again, huh?
Well, we have the brinksmanship at the highest level in the Oval Office that can do something by executive fiat, through an executive order, or just say don't enforce this. We see the Defense of Marriage Act, by the boards, don't enforce the Defense of Marriage Act anymore. So this is not the first time it's happened. And when we permit, without saying anything, and we as Americans, I don't think we feel so empowered with the political structure the way it is, what can we do? Which, that is the next thing that people have asked me, that question, the very question, what do we do?
But when I sit here and listen to you, I mean, the principles we were founded under, the Constitution. I mean, there is no better. How? Why does Congress? When somebody gives the order to the troops in the field, don't enforce that. Just sit on it. And it's unconstitutional. It's laws. It's on the books. It was put there by the government, and now the other guy, he just says, just don't worry about it. Why doesn't somebody scream it through the halls of Congress that man, you're wrong and you're crooked? I mean, that's all there is to it. Why isn't somebody, other than these 10 fellows that stood up, why isn't somebody standing behind these guys and shouting it from the rooftop that these things are happening, and little by little we're getting clipped, unbeknownst to a lot of people. We're just getting flat out clipped until we're going to turn around someday. And it's hasta la vista. It's all over, baby. And we're not going to be anything what we used to be. Why, Brett? And I don't understand why people won't stand up like that.
Two of the agents from ATF that stood up against the ATF for this Operation Fast and Furious, which thousands of weapons ended up in Mexico, and there's some questions being asked of Napolitano. Well, don't you folks enforce southbound as well as northbound in terms of movement? And of course we do. Customs does. They can examine outbound as much as they can inbound. So they were well within their rights to, if they suspected weapons were going illegally out of the country, they could have stopped someone. Well, they didn't know it. That's what they're saying. And Napolitano's response was, well, I don't think the ATF misled us. I hope they didn't. Well, the ATF was not going to tell Customs DHS about the operation because that would have mucked it up. They would have had inspectors and could have been zealous and heard something in the coffee in the break room, and they may have just taken it upon themselves to go over and do the right thing and stop southbound traffic, and they may have caught someone with guns. The ATF agents that came forward went to Charles Grassley, senator out of Iowa, Republican, for protection. They said, we want to come forward and talk to you about this, and Joe Hester got involved, and there was a group, I think there's about 4 or 5 now involved, and they're pursuing another case out of Milwaukee, not quite the same, but involving the ATF and guns, and wanted protection under the Whistleblower Protection Act. And Grassley warned B. Todd Jones not to do anything, not to retaliate. They were concerned citizens, and nonetheless they were agents. B. Todd Jones came out with a memo shortly thereafter telling his people, we will spare no expense or effort in getting rid of you if you talk about what goes on within ATF. And that became public knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Agent Steffel was given his walking papers in a Denny's parking lot. The supervisory personnel met him and said, you're done. That was some time ago now. So I don't know what he's doing for money. But that is the reality of it. And whatever is going on now, I read about and I sometimes talk to my colleagues, and I've got to be honest, I mean, there's nothing earth-shattering that they know. At the same time, I feel the sense of wanting to protect them as well, because if something does get out, if anyone does, and there's been enough said that would put them in harm's way, but nonetheless, I'm concerned for their well-being. Despite the fact that I've left, I don't want them to have problems, but Cefalu and his partner are going to have problems. They've had problems. So to answer your question, why aren't people stepping forward? First of all, you've got the agents that won't because of what exactly has happened. And the second, I don't know if there's just so much, there's a cult following or cult of personality or something that no one dares approach that because of a number of reasons that all fall under political correctness, why we shouldn't pursue certain articles of impeachment. I mean, I'm not saying that, but I'm saying you hear some murmurs about someone saying something should be done. There's been nothing proposed. I don't know if there's a high crime and misdemeanor, but you look at what Clinton went under for Monica Lewinsky, you think, damn, this seems like it's a lot worse. So I agree with you. I don't have any insider information. I'm speaking just as a citizen, just like you. I think we're also kowtowed by societal pressures and social engineering. I don't know if anyone has the guts anymore to say enough is enough. I mean, I read books on Joe McCarthy. You say McCarthy and people say, well, he was a villain. No, this guy was a hero. I'm telling you. He had it right in the 50s. And he didn't survive. He died in his 40s. He drank himself to death back in Wisconsin. But this fellow had it right with the State Department and all his findings. He may have been a bit clumsy at times, but he was an American, and now we've used his name in a pejorative sense. And that is what happens. I think politicians are afraid of the same thing happening to them.
I was telling my son-in-law this morning, I said, when I hear people say, and a lot of times I don't hear them say, it's just their attitude, it's their body language, well, it would never happen here. I said, a crazy paper hanger in Germany almost destroyed the entire world. But somebody probably said, well, it would never happen here. And throughout history, I'm sure it has been said over and over, it'll never happen here. But it does. And this is getting downright scary, Brett, because these things that are taking place on one hand is, and I believe this with all my heart, it's a design, it's a conscious plan. I think it has been in operation for God only knows how long. And it's starting to come to fruition. And it used to be underneath the blankets where you couldn't see it. It was almost like you could feel it, but you couldn't see it. Now it's almost become blatantly in your face. This is the way it is, and this is the way it's going to be. And if you don't like it, then we have a remedy for you. I really fear for our country, the direction that we're moving in. And I know we hear that old cliche, the direction that we're moving in. I fear that people aren't getting this stuff that's going on, the things that you mentioned. I fear for our country. Could it lead to civil war somewhere down the road? Well, that would never happen in America. It happened once, and it was. I mean, can tyranny strike America? Sure it can. Sure it can. And it's scary, Brett. It's scary. I want to ask you this, and I've heard from different sources, and you probably heard it, but I've heard rumors that the Homeland Security was buying a whole lot of ammunition. Is there any truth to that?
You know, I've read the same thing, and I'm not aware of. I don't have anyone at Fort Benning or anyone that is in charge of that. I can only say that there's no shortage of ammunition at any office throughout the country.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if there is, it's only because of budget. I can tell you there has been a recent graduation of a group of FEMA young people that recently graduated after training. I don't know if there's 349 of them, but a lot of people are raising the flag saying that this looks, I have no information, no inside information other than what I read. But they say, well, this kind of smacks of what was going on in Nazi Germany with the brown shirts.
The brown shirts, yes.
They're supposed to help with FEMA operations and preparedness and all this. And they're operating under, under the commander-in-chief. I mean, that's just calling the orders. I don't know what they're commanded to do. I have no idea. I don't have the insider information. You see the pictures, and you think it looks awfully familiar.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That was my very next question. How about these FEMA things that's going on? I mean, the whole scenario, the whole ball of wax is just. I never thought that I would ever see anything that is even near to what's going on in America today. But the shift, the change, you could feel it. It's almost like the earth moved a certain direction, and here we are. It is very, very scary. My God, Brett, I could sit and talk to you for hours. I've kept you about 75 minutes. Ladies and gentlemen, please get Brett's book, Homeland Insecurity, Failed Politics, Policies, and a Nation at Risk.
I did want to give people my website. I'd love to hear from them. So
sure.
If you don't mind, I'll give myself a shameless plug.
Mm-hmm.
My website is www.homeland-insecurity. Don't forget the dash, homeland-insecurity.com. My email is brett@homeland-insecurity.com. It's been a pleasure being on your show, and I would welcome any comments or questions to me at my email address, and the discussion continues. And thank you for the opportunity.
Oh, thank you, Brett. I mean, a wealth of information. Thank you for lighting me up. I appreciate that, buddy. And listen, will you come back again sometime?
I'd love to. There's a lot we didn't talk about, so I have probably a good hour's worth of material as long as you can stand it.
Good. Oh, I can stand it. Thank you so much, buddy. God bless you. Stay safe and keep on keeping on.
And same to you and your audience. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. And there we are, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, Brett Braaten. I remembered. Braaten. I have to think. Homeland Insecurity, failed politics, policies, and a nation at risk. Homeland-insecurity.com. Homelandinsecurity.com. Get the book. Please get the book. I have a book right here in my hand. See, I get I get that way. Whatever that's called, I get that way. If you're listening to this show tonight live, or you listen to it later, either tonight or tomorrow or whenever you listen to it, please, after you listen to it, if it doesn't do something to you, if it doesn't turn the light switch on, then I don't know what else will. But please, please, tell people. Tell them. Listen to this man. Listen to this man. Braaten. He's been there. He was on the inside. He's been there. He's done that. And thank God there's men like him, because he's come out. He has retired. I don't know what retaliation, and he said it himself. He don't know what they could do. But he wrote a book. He put it out there in front of God and everybody. Get the book. Get the book. America has been dumbed down, but thanks God that there's men such as this, Braaten, that'll stand up, and those 10 agents that will stand up, and the whistleblowers that stood up with the Fast and Furious thing that's going down. If nothing else, please pray for them, because they need God's protection. This is scary times, ladies and gentlemen. Our nation is standing at the very crossroads, and I'll be right back. How about that? Giles, Fallen Angel. Hey, tell me something. I want to know, if you've never been to the Funny Farm radio studio, you're missing it. I'm just telling you, you're missing it. We've got them inside, and every single night it's standing room only. We've got the dance floor here, and I'm telling you, after our guest leaves, these guys and gals get it on. I mean, they head for the dance floor. Not only do we have the audience inside, we have the audience outside. We have monitors on the side of the building where they can look inside, see what's going on in here. And we have monitors in here that can look outside and see what's going out there. Now, look, you have to picture this. The huge parking lot here is completely full. I mean, it is full. In fact, it gets so full that they end up parking cattywampus and over here and over there and anywhere they can fit the vehicle. And we have them coming from all over. They come from your world, which is the real world, into our world, and they come from all parts of the real world into our world. And they come from our world to here. And they come in rickshaws, they come in automobiles, they come in pickup trucks, some of them dilapidated and all raggedy looking, but they come nonetheless. They come on bicycles built for two. They come on motorcycles. They come in 6x or big trucks. They walk. And listen, you're not going to believe me. You're not going to believe me. But I'm telling you something. I'm listen to Espinlob just for a second, and then I'm going to get serious again. You won't. You got to believe me. Some of you in the real world won't, but a lot of you that are here, you will. We even have people that comes here on camelback. We have we have I'm not laughing at what I'm saying. I'm laughing because the people's laughing. They make me laugh sometimes. Look, we have people coming here on camelback. They come in caravans, just like you see on the movies. we and we have one hump and two hump camels here. Yeah, we've got one hump and two hump camels, and we even oh lordy, and we even have a camel's parking lot. Y'all making me laugh now. Just let me alone. Let me explain this to our listeners. We even have a camel's parking lot, and we have camel parking attendants. It's like it. Listen to me now. Listen to me. Quit laughing long enough. Oh my God. It's almost like a camel, what is it, valet service. You pull up and they park your camel. And then when you're ready to leave, the camel parkers or the camel attendants, they go get your particular camel, bring it back, and you get up and off you go. But that's what goes on here at the Funny Farm. I thought I'd just throw that in. And if you've never been on a camel, you're missing something. Now I'm telling you, you are missing something, and there's not a better way to come to the Funny Farm than on a one hump or a two hump camel. How'd I get on this? I had a definite place I was heading for, and man, I just I fell off the path, the trail. I booby trapped myself. Oh, lordy, 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 lordy. Okay, let me get myself together here. Let me get myself together and get serious. Ow, Charlie. Ow, man.
Well, I'm not a crook.
Stop it, Charlie. Go ahead, I dare you. Oh, you did too, did you? One more time. Oh, that feels so good. Yeah, I love it. I love it. Oh man. Hey, before we move on here, I forgot to tell you that we have not only do we have a camel parking lot, and where the one hump and two hump camels park at, but and we not only have a camel valet service where you pull up on your one humper, two humper, and you get off, and the dude parks your camel for you. Oh, stop it now! Listen, you're gonna make me forget. You're gonna make me forget what I was trying to say. We got a valet, valet dude. He gets up there and parks your camel for you. But we have wherever there's camels, there's gonna be some there's gonna be some stuff. I mean, have you ever seen a parked camel? If you haven't seen a parked camel, the next time you see a camel that's parked, check them out, because to the rear of the one hump or two hump, you will see stuff. and underneath them, you will see other stuff. You know what I mean? But I said all that, and I don't know how I got on this, but camels are only doing what camels do. You know what I'm saying? I mean, we got places that we do the stuff, like behind closed doors. Camels, they don't have behind closed doors. I mean, they just do. But anyhow, as the attendant brings the valet dude brings your camel back, one or two hump. You have to always emphasize whether it's a one or a two. And you mount old Charlie the camel, and off you go into the wild blue yonder. He left behind some stuff, and we have a special cleanup crew that takes care of the stuff. Yeah. I'll be right back.
We'll take you where you are to where you wanna be. 'Cause radio works. Radio works. We'll take you where you are to where you wanna be. 'Cause radio works. Radio works.
Yeah, it do. Radio works. Hey, I want to say thank you, a very special thank you to Braaten, who has written the book, Homeland Insecurity. He spent 29 years working with Customs and Homeland Security. He's been there, done that. He was on the inside. He's seen the politics. He's seen the power. He's seen the influence. He sees the egos. He sees the political correctness. and put it in Espinlob's terms, he's seen the shenanigans, and he's seen you know the people that want to blow by you, and I mean he's seen it. He's seen it, and thank God he's got enough courage that he wrote the book Homeland Insecurity: Failed Politics, Policies, in a Nation at Risk by Mr. Braaten. And go to his website. Write this down. Write this down. Please write this down. Homeland Insecurity.com. Homeland-insecurity.com. And there you can read about Brett. You can see some videos. The whole nine yards. Sign his guest book. And get his book. Make sure you get his book. It is a tremendous, tremendous read. I've got one in my hand right now. And I started it. I started it before showtime and went through it. Man, I can't wait. I can't wait to get my feet propped up real good and kick back and read Homeland Insecurity: Failed Politics, Policies, and a Nation at Risk by Brett Braaten. Please get it. I'm begging you, please get that book. Wow. And so.
I just can't live without you, babe. My love for you is here to stay. I just can't live without you, babe. Although you've hurt me, I don't mind, even though you're so unkind. I just can't live without you, babe. I think about you night and day. I just can't live without you, babe. Although you hurt me, it's okay. I'm begging you, babe, please don't go away. I just can't live without you, babe. My love for you is here to stay. I just can't live without you, babe. Although you hurt me, I don't mind, even though you're so unkind.
Wow, that snuck up on me, Charlie. I wasn't ready for that. But anyhow, here we are. You're listening to the George Espinlov Show, if you haven't figured that out yet, that comes to you live from the Funny Farm in a place called Our World, Monday through Friday, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, right here on the Spreaker Network. Email us, George C.E. at Comcast.net, and we will respond to each and every one. Thank you for those that have been writing. Keep them coming. Keep them coming. They just make us so happy around here. Charlie, he gets all beside himself when we get email. He just jumps up and down. Sometimes he'll check the email, and if I'm not here, man, my phone will be ringing, and he'll be, you can tell he's jumping up and down, all excited, all happy. He's going through some changes, and he just tell me, man, Pops, we got more. So that's just the way it is around here. Tomorrow night, and my little dooflicky here. Let me get my little dooflicky over here. Okay, tomorrow night, February 7th. Man, this month's flying by. Mr. Frank Reed, who wrote several books. One, and I'm going to get it wrong, and I don't know why I don't put it in front of me, because that's the way I am sometimes. Mr. Frank Reed, who wrote the book Mother of Six Marines, or Six Marines for Mother. Now, how would you like to be a woman Your husband is a Marine, and then there's 5 sons that end up being Marines. How would you like that? And it's all in different, naturally, it's all in different times, it's all in different years. I mean, they wasn't all born at the same time. That's been love. You amaze yourself sometimes. But anyways, where am I at? That camel thing really messed me up. But anyhow, it's 6 Marines for Mother, or Mother of 6 Marines, by Frank Reed, he was the eldest son, and he was the first to go in the Marine Corps, and then his other brothers followed in his footsteps. He followed in his father's footsteps. So how would you like to be a woman with 6 Marines in your family? Huh? I'm telling you what. That would be... She had to be one tough lady, I'm telling you. And I'll bet she kept all 6 of them, including her husband. I'll bet she kept all 6 of them in line. I'll just bet you she did. But he'll be with us tomorrow night, and he'll be telling us the story of how he wrote the book, or why he wrote the book, about his mom and his dad and his brothers, and where they served and when they served. And he's 89 years old. He was in the Marine Corps in the Second World War. He is 89 years old. And I'll tell you what, we really need to tip our hat to Mr. Frank Reed when he comes tomorrow night and give him a great big welcome. Will you all do that? Huh? Give him a great big welcome? All right, give him one like that, and I'll be happy. Yeah. Thank you. You're just all right. I'm telling you. For you that don't know it, well, I don't know why I make myself laugh sometimes. I guess that's just the way it is. That's all part of my crazy. But anyways, for you that don't know, or for you that may not be aware, we have added another program to our repertoire here, and we are running the ministry of Pacific Garden Mission out of Chicago, Illinois. They have been doing radio since 1950, and they do real dramatization of real people and their circumstances, and how they come out on the other side in total victory. If you would go to Chicago and visit the Pacific Garden Mission on Saturday afternoon at 3 o'clock, they do, and they have been doing this since 1950, they do the radio program Unshackled in front of a live audience with real live actors that portray the people in the story, sound effects and all. And we just counted a real privilege that the George Espinlove Show can carry Unshackled, the ministry of Pacific Garden Ministry. And we come on live Saturday evening, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, and then again Sunday morning at 7 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. We ran the first program last Saturday and Sunday morning, and I mean to tell you, we have had some tremendous response. I need to sit down quickly first thing tomorrow and email Flossie McNeil, who was so instrumental in helping us get this off the ground. She was so helpful in leading and walking us through the agreement, the station agreement documents that we signed, and so on and so forth, and getting us all up and ready to go. I need to send her an email tomorrow and tell her the tremendous response that we've already received. They are on over 2,600 radio outlets around the world. They broadcast, listen, their show, Unshackled, is broadcast over 12,000 times a week. That's right, over 12,000 times a week. So, if you want to listen to some good old dramatization, you know, if you never heard old-time radio like The Lone Ranger and Gunsmoke and The Creaking Door and The Green Shadow and all those things, and some of you have no idea what I'm talking about, but we used to gather around the radio and we'd listen to The Creaking Door or The Shadow Knows. You have no clue what I'm saying. But anyhow, if you've never heard a good old dramatization, you know, it's television without the picture. Just picture it that way. You're listening to it. There's the sights or the sounds and the voices and the emphasis and the emotion, and you can sit there and listen to it. It's a story about a real live person that has found themselves in dire strait in one way, shape, or form, and through the gospel, they come out on the other side a winner. So tune in on Saturday night, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, and this is the program that will be running Saturday evening on Unshackled.
Forgiving infidelity is extremely difficult. A woman called Terson grew up with an unfaithful father, and then she married a man who was unfaithful. Don't miss the inspiring story of how she forgave when she found someone who was faithful and true. Listen to her dramatized testimony coming soon on Unshackled.
So, please tune in for Unshackled Saturday night. Tomorrow night, Mr. Frank Reed. It'll be a delight. I talked with him on the telephone. He is out of California. I spoke with him yesterday. I think it was yesterday. I get to talk to so many wonderful people all across this country and even around the world. I've been so blessed, so privileged that I can do this. It's been in my blood. It's always been in my blood. I've done this before. Been there, done that. You know what they say? But I'll tell you what, this is so enjoyable. And once again, I want to say thank you to all of our listeners, because you are the ones that make it happen. And we continually want to make our radio show better and better and better. Listen, if you never remember George Espinlaub, I trust that you will remember the incredible guests that we have on each and every night from all walks of life. We've had them here from the Reagan White House to scientists and doctors and teachers, and my goodness, we've had them. Wonderful musicians. And by the way, if my friend Saul Knopf is listening, tomorrow night, I need to make myself a note. Tomorrow night, Saul, I will give everyone your itinerary, where you're going to be at this weekend, so they can come and see you if they're in our area. And to my friend Rick Fowler down there in Athens, Georgia, if you're listening tonight, Rick, or whenever you do listen, I'm thinking about you, buddy. And my other friend, Nelson Trout, up there in Jersey. Hang in there, Nelson. I'm thinking about you. And to my friend Lou Balls, I know he's around somewhere listening to the radio show. I love you, buddy. You hang in there. Be careful when you're on that road, and you just keep on keeping on. And I'll tell you what, he sends me pictures of some food all the time. I mean, it is just literally awesome. I could just eat a full-course meal, and he sends me pictures of what he's eaten somewhere in his travels, and it makes me hungry all over again. Hey, we're going to get out of here. We're going to shake the tail of the puppy and get out the door. You know what I'm saying? There's a whole lot of love coming to you from the Funny Farm. Yes, there is. We're goofy, we're strange, but we still love you. Email me, GeorgeCE at Comcast.net. GeorgeCE at Comcast.net. Wherever you're at, if it's nighttime, you have a great night. If it's already daytime where you're at, you have a fine, fine day. But regardless of where you're at and what it is, until tomorrow night, same time, same station, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, right here on the Spreaker Network, live from the Funny Farm in a place called Our World. Until then, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I love you. I mean that. I love you from way down deep inside my little pea-picking heart, like Tennessee Ernie Ford used to say. Some of you don't know who he was, but anyway, he was a great fella. Until then, this is George Espinlob saying good night, and God bless you real, real good. Good night, all.